Hey guys, how you doing? It's Martin Cliffe here. Welcome to my channel. Greetings from sunny, for a surprise, Lancashire. Long-time viewers of the channel will no doubt recognise, although possibly with slightly less beard, Mr. Ed Cooke. Welcome.
Hello, more beard. Thank you.
Yes, more beard now, but less beard in previous videos.
Yes. In fact, if this video goes on too long, we'll both have more beard than when we began.
This is very true.
That's how we'll know. Have I appeared on your channel before in its present format?
Yes, I think was it 4 years ago we did a conversation with Ed Cooke?
Yes, about that, but hasn't your channel changed format since?
Probably several times.
I think so.
But I think we're back to doing, what we were doing at that point. Yeah.
So how's YouTube been treating you?
Well, I'm very pleased to see that my subscriber numbers have been slowly but steadily growing. Which is a reminder, if you're not subscribed, click that red subscribe button down below. Give the video a thumbs up because that's always appreciated. And comment below because we'd love you to be part of the community. Thank you for the cool segue.
Not at all. So I have just bought, with a little help from you, my first Stratocaster.
Yeah.
That's very exciting. That's something I was holding off till I was maybe 50 or 55 or 60 or some round number, but I've gone ahead and done it. Do you want to say anything about the history of the beast that I've just bought off you?
I mean, my part of the history is relatively straightforward. When I was going through my phase of buying multiples of guitars, was looking for a white Maple Neck Strat, and happened to see that one on eBay. It was in the UK, so I actually had it shipped to Rob's, a fellow band member of many years. He looked after it for a while. Then next time I was in the UK, collected it. I think it's been here at my parents' for 3 years. And to be honest, just not really played it as much as I should have done. So it was definitely right to go to someone who will enjoy it. And you, as you said the other night, you've always wanted a Strat. So
that would be me.
It seems, yeah, a marriage made in heaven, if you will.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I don't readily associate you with the Strat. There are certain guitars that you've said on this channel aren't quite right for you, like the Les Paul. Yeah,
I mean, I have my one very special Les Paul that I love for certain things. It's great for recording. It's a good guitar for pedal demos because it's a guitar that people are familiar with, but it's not something I would choose to play live. Ergonomics is a bit off for me. Yeah, and it's heavy as well, to be honest. I mean, it's light for a Les Paul, but anyone who's played a Les Paul will know there is no such thing as a light Les Paul.
I mean, there's a fantastic video on YouTube link somewhere in which a guy demonstrates in about 20 minutes how to set up a Strat. It's a really good video, and I recommend that you watch it if we can link it. Do you want to say anything about? I mean, we were trying to set it up for me. I had a little bit of trouble with some string changes. Just a simple question. I mean, do you want to say anything for beginners about changing strings? It sounds simple. One little tip you gave me was just to bend the end of the string to get it through the saddle, just that sort of thing. Yeah,
so that was not on the Strat. In fact, that was on the bass that I think is just out of shot.
We're getting round to the bass.
Yeah, but if it's a bridge where the strings are a top-mounted, rear-mounted bridge, if you will, where the string comes through the back of the bridge and then has to get over the saddle. Particularly with the thicker strings, it can be a little bit tricky to get the string to then go over the bridge saddle. Sometimes it goes underneath. So it's a good idea just to put a little bit of an up kink in the end of the string. So again, it's perhaps more applicable to basses. Just so that as you push it through the hole, it naturally goes up. Because on a bass, because they've got the split traditional style tuning pegs, you're going to be cutting off the end of the string anyway. So just give it a little bit of a bend, just guide it over the saddle, and that usually just makes your life a lot easier.
Yep. Staying with the saddle, it was only when I watched this video that I realised about those screws that are into the bottom of the saddle and how you can tighten and loosen them to adjust the intonation. Is that something you need to do often, or any time you change string gauge?
Yeah, I mean, it's a case of generally you would want to check the intonation when you change string, and string gauge is important because usually if you're changing to another set of 9 to 42s or 10 to 46s or whatever, they should be fairly consistent, certainly from the same manufacturer and the same string material. If you're going from stainless steel strings to nickel strings, sometimes they might need a little bit of a tweak. And the way to check them always is check the harmonic on the 12th fret against the fretted 12th fret. And as long as the guitar is set up reasonably well so the strings aren't stupidly high, they should be the same pitch. If the harmonic is sharper than the fretted note, then you need to tighten it. So clockwise adjust the screw in the back so it pulls the saddle backwards. I think that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if basically you'll know, because if you tighten it and one will go sharp relative to the other, and if you loosen it, the other way will go. So you just adjust it until they're the same pitch. Use your ears, use a tuner. If you've got a tuner with a strobe function, which even something like the TC Polytune has a strobe function, it's just a bit fiddly to get to, and the Boss TU3 I think does as well. But I use the really nice Sonic Research turbo tuners, which are a strobe by default, and that basically makes it much more easy to see accurately. They're a right pain for tuning up a guitar if you've got to do a lot of tuning, because it takes a long time to get it exactly in line. But for setting intonation, a strobe tuner is a real advantage.
Mm-hmm. And should I, heaven forbid, should I be messing with the truss rod in this new Strat?
Because it's spent most of its time in the UK, and the UK is relatively consistent in terms of humidity and climate, I've not found much need to adjust truss rods on guitars in the UK.
Right. That's a relief.
No pun intended. Or perhaps
Indeed,
pun intended.
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, I know that people, if you're living somewhere like the Midwest where it gets very cold and you have your heating on, it gets very dry in the winter, and then in the summer it warms up and gets more humid, you will need to adjust your truss rod probably in the spring and the autumn to compensate for that. Mm-hmm. Where we were in Hong Kong, it was humid all the time, so I never had to adjust anything. In Bucharest, where we are now, except not now, but hopefully by the time you watch this video, I will be back in Bucharest. Hopefully,
fingers crossed.
Then it's again, humidity it's humidity that's the real key. Humidity is it is the thing that the neck reacts most to. Also, again, if you're just changing string gauge, which again goes back to the same thing. If you're changing string gauge by 1 gauge, so 9s to 10s, 10s to 9s, 10s to 11s, you're probably not going to need to tweak it. Maybe if your action's a little bit off, just give it about 1/8 of a turn. Mm-hmm. But if you're making a significant change, like say if I was going from a guitar that was set up for 8s and I wanted to play slide on it with a set of 12s or 13s, then I would need to slowly, because it's something that you don't want to like give it 5 turns straight away. Yeah, you would give it a quarter turn, let it settle for 10-15 minutes, and then give it a little bit more. But you are going to need to adjust the truss rods to compensate for the extra string tension, or the less string tension if you're going to lighter gauge.
Mm-hmm. Now the Strat, it's not a vintage Strat, is it? If it were a vintage Strat, I would have to access the truss rod via the bottom, wouldn't I, of the fretboard? Yeah,
and I again, to do that on traditional Strats and Tellys, you actually had to take the neck off.
Oh my word!
Which is in theory, because maple is pretty strong, so unscrewing the bolts that hold a maple neck on is not going to do any significant damage, except obviously with any screw going into wood, the more times you unscrew it and then screw it back in, the more it runs the risk of getting a bit furred up. But usually, so that's why some of the contemporary manufacturers using threaded inserts into the neck instead, and bolts rather than screws. But one way, if you ever do have to take the neck off a guitar, when you're putting the screw back in, is just give it a sort of quarter turn anti-clockwise first, so it seats into the thread properly. So you're not you're cross-threading the screw in the hole. That generally is a good guide to prevent it running into any other risk. Because the last thing you want is either for your screw to strip out, or the neck to crack, or any of those things. But adjusting vintage necks with the truss rod adjustment at the heel end is a pain.
Another simple question is about changing strings, because I know you were chortling a little bit at my string changing technique, because it took me so long that we nearly missed lunch. Guitar vertical or horizontal? What do you think when you're changing strings?
I prefer horizontal. If I'm just going to pause and grab a guitar. So as if by magic, I now have a guitar on my lap. For me, it makes sense. I like to be able to see the guitar as I'm restringing it. So particularly if you've got a guitar that you're feeding through from the back, I like to be able to have it on my knee so it's easy to just roll about. I've seen plenty of people do it this way, and this is useful as in you can see the string going onto the peg a lot more. But for me, it's just easier to keep everything level, and then you've got kind of one hand can kind of hold the string taut at this end while you're winding it onto the other end. Just helps keep everything nice and straight. Yeah, straight through the nut. A bit of tension on the tuner as you're tightening it up. That to me just makes my life easier.
Okay, so two stupid mistakes that I've made in the past when changing strings. One is that I've cut far too much string off the end. How much string should I cut off the end?
So if you're using a vintage split style tuner, like on most basses, I generally go for about 2 machine heads, about 3 inches worth of extra string beyond the machine head itself. That generally gives me enough to be able to poke it in the hole and get enough wraps on to get a good amount of tension without slipping, but you don't want like 15 wraps because that then gives you lots of tuning instability.
Sure, and the other thing that I always do wrong is that when I'm wrapping the string round the post, I always seem to end up with string overlapping string. Now that's bad, isn't it? Because it results in detuning.
Yeah, again, that's all about slipping. I mean, most guitars that I've used these days have locking tuners, so that's less of an issue. You just pull the string tight, lock it off, and you don't have to worry about any wraps. In fact, I watched a video this morning that someone had used locking tuners but had locked the string off before they pulled it tight, so then they end up with 3 or 4 wraps around the string, which completely defeats the point of locking tuners. What you'd want ideally is at most 1 sort of complete loop around the post with a locking tuner, and ideally about half works well, I find. But yeah, the key really is to keep tension. So as you're tuning, maybe, and it's difficult because we only have 2 hands, most of us. So holding a bit of tension just beyond the nut as you're winding it on will just make sure that every wrap is slightly below the one the one that's already on the capstan. So maybe you want to. One thing I do sometimes is I'll hold my index finger that will hold the string down while I'm tuning with my left hand, and my little finger will pull the string up to give it tension. Or maybe I'll rest my elbow on the string again just to hold it in place and on the neck as I'm tightening up, but always putting a little bit of downward pressure between the nut and the machine head.
Now, it's in order to get the pressure past the nut that we have either staggered tuners or string trees, isn't it?
Yes, or if you have a headstock with a tilted back angle. Again, like the Yamaha basses that you're rather familiar with.
Yes, it's the angle that's doing the tension on the nut.
So in that case, it's the angle, and a lot of like Ibanez guitars have an angle back headstock, and of course the Les Paul, the Gibsons notoriously have a headstock angle that's too steep and then breaks. But yeah, sometimes a little bit of angle or staggered tuners is a good way of maintaining enough tension. If you don't have either of those, then a string tree to pull the strings. And it's usually only the high E and B strings. Occasionally you'll see them on the D and G as well, just to pull the strings down closer to the headstock so that the break angle over the nut is tight enough that they don't rattle.
That's probably all I wanted to say about the Strat, so let's move on to the bass, because you and I, primarily you, have been working on my main bass. You've name-checked it before as the Yamaha Fretted 6, and here it is in the studio. So my contribution was to choose this fantastic set of strings. I think it's a set, I don't think it's some factory offcuts or anything. It's been sold to me as a single product. Yes,
it wouldn't perhaps have been my aesthetic choice, but...
I'm glad that I contributed somehow to this project. Apart from that, you did a lot more work on the bass. What have you got up to? What have you done?
Well, the first thing that we had to deal with was that unfortunately you had a battery leak.
I did.
I have a couple of not particularly exciting pictures that I'll put in while we're talking about this. But that was just a case of you'd already done quite a good job cleaning it up with white vinegar, just cleaning up some of the excess battery acid.
That's right. Before I applied the white vinegar, I also gave it a scrub with an old toothbrush, which is a good tip. But then I'd applied some white vinegar with a cotton bud, and that didn't seem to have quite done the job because I'd got wow and flutter, I guess, electronic noises at any rate, but I'd got no tone from the strings coming out.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly what had caused that. Something creating resistance. The tricky thing, that's the reason white vinegar is not necessarily the best idea, is because it's acidic, as is the battery acid, so it might actually exacerbate the problem. So maybe something more like bicarbonate soda or something might have been a better option. I don't know. Something to neutralise the acid, so it's not eating too much into the copper contacts.
I guess another problem with the white vinegar is that unlike nail polish remover or other kinds of acetone, it doesn't dry, does it? I've got to leave it to dry, and if I don't leave it to dry, I'm going to have a short circuit on my hands, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, it's not very conductive, so it's not so much of an issue, but it would have gained, potentially drain your battery quickly. So what we actually ended up using, it was just a bit of contact cleaner, WD-40 contact cleaner, not sponsored. Which is great because it evaporates really quickly, but it just helps to clean the content. And I just use the tip of a screwdriver just to scrape the terminal, make sure it was fresh copper rather than that kind of green oxidized copper, which doesn't conduct as well and can give you a few issues.
And it really has worked, hasn't it? Because I know some YouTube videos advise against the use of WD-40. I guess they're talking about the regular stuff rather than the specific contact cleaner because it doesn't dry, or it leaves residue, doesn't it, the regular stuff?
Yes, because it's designed to repel water and to be kind of a lubricating agent, whereas contact cleaner is designed literally for cleaning the contacts. So you'll use it inside a switch, for instance. So if your selector switch is a bit scratchy, and perhaps we should have done that on the Strat, but getting to it is a bit fiddly, it just cleans the contact, cleans all the ick off, and just helps, and then evaporates pretty
Technical
quickly.
term.
Yeah, ick. The other issue that we ran into was that the brand of batteries you were using, there is fractions of tolerance of differences in terms of the length of different batteries. So, Duracell are a certain number of millimeters, and then maybe the Energizers are slightly longer, and Vartas or Golden Power or whatever it is might be slightly shorter. And the particular battery that you were trying to use was, for that particular battery compartment, slightly short. So we just had to...
we shimmed it, didn't we?
Yeah, we just very simply, very easy solution is just get a bit of cardboard and just put it in between, not at the contact end of the battery, but at the back end of the battery, just to make sure it's making a really solid connection with the contacts.
So after all that, we got sound out of the bass again.
We did.
And then we had a look at the machine heads.
Yeah, so I mean, this bass is not light.
No.
I think it was coming in at almost 5 kilos.
I think we have a photo.
Yes. I mean, 6-string basses are always going to be heavy, and as I've explained on the channel before, Yamaha TRBs are always heavy. So it's not the greatest combination for a lightweight bass. But one solution that I discovered on the 5-string fretless was that if you replace the tuners with a lighter tuner, the Hipshot open gear tuners are significantly lighter in weight. Again, I've got images of the weight of the set of 6 of the original Yamaha Goto tuners and the Hipshot tuners. It's not inconsiderable, so replacing the tuners, in the end we were only able to replace 5, which was slightly annoying because the headstock is a little bit tight. On the what are the A and D strings? Trying to work out what strings they are on.
Yeah, I don't know if we probably can't see on the long shot.
No, but yeah, so we've had to put one of the Yamaha branded tuners back on just because there just wasn't quite enough clearance between those two machine heads.
The problem is this screw, isn't it? The black screw poking out at the end of the hip shot. We hadn't got the clearance here at the top.
Yeah, so if we'd have gone for the import hip shot tuners, which aren't reversible, they don't have that screw at the end.
So that screw is the screw to reverse it.
Yes.
I see. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that holds the tuning key onto the capstan. So that I think if we'd done that, that might be something we can investigate in the future, but it's not exactly a pressing concern. Then that would have solved the solved that issue. But yeah, it's just And as you're saying, it's not something that you suddenly, it's the lightest bass in the world by any
No,
means.
it's still pretty heavy.
But it has taken off, what do we say, 55 grams?
55 grams thereabouts.
From the weight, which it's not always just about reducing the weight, it's also
About the balance, isn't it?
Yeah, because all of that weight is on the headstock, which is 35 on a 35-inch scale bass. It's quite a long way from the centre of gravity. So, and any way you can shift the centre of gravity slightly more towards the body will just help it to balance better and potentially reduce you having to hold the weight of the neck with your left hand while you're playing, which should hopefully make your playing more comfortable.
I read somewhere recently that the original, the TRB Mark 1s, only had a 34-inch scale. Had you heard that?
Yes, in fact, I think my fretless that appeared in my guitar videos, my 4-string fretless, was a 34-inch scale.
Mm-hmm.
Rob now has that.
This is Rob, who once said that bass was the boringest instrument.
Yes, and now plays bass more than possibly
Fantastic.
anything else. So that I think it was certainly the TRBX series, which is the more recent series of slightly more affordable TRBs, have gone back to a 34-inch scale. And I don't know that there's any real benefit of a 35-inch scale on a 4-string bass, but any bass with a low B, I prefer to have a slightly longer scale so you get slightly better string tension. All of my 5 strings, except for one, are 35-inch scale, and I do notice the difference on the 34-inch one, particularly on the low B. So I just want to thank you for joining us as part of this little conversation. Thanks also to Ed for agreeing to be part of this. Hope you've enjoyed this little chat. It's a very different video from quite a lot we've done lately. Lots more to come in 2022 of all kinds of content. Obviously, Martin's Monday pedal playthroughs will be resuming on Mondays if they haven't already. Again, not exactly sure when this video is going to go live, but it will be some point into the new year. Thanks for watching. Remember again, like, comment, subscribe. Take care. I will see you very soon, and Ed will hopefully see you in not too distant future. Take care.